Hi, you guys. Good morning. So I just did a whole video on our protections by law, ruled down from the Supreme Court and the Constitution about our right to bear arms and what it means to our nation. And my computer ate it. I find that to be very odd. Very odd. So I went over the theories, I went over the Supreme Court rulings, I went over everything. It's basically saying that the Second Amendment, its prefatory clause, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, and its operative clause, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. To perhaps oversimplify the prefatory clause, arguing that the purpose of the clause was to protect the states in their authority to maintain formal organized militia units, the individual rights thesis emphasized the operative clause so that individuals would be protected in the ownership, possession, and transportation of firearms. Whatever the amendment meant, it was seen as a bar only to federal action, not state or private restraints. And I believe that it was originally enacted, for men to show up. The significance of the militia, the court continued, was that it comprised of civilians primarily, soldiers on occasion. It was upon this force that states could rely for the defense and securing of the laws, on a force that comprised all males physically capable of acting in concert for the common defense, who, when called for service, were expected to appear bearing arms, supplied by themselves, and of the kind in common use at the time. So, I'm in California. So there was the court struck down a District of Columbia law that banned virtually all handguns, that required that any other type of firearm in a home be disassembled or bound by a trigger lock at all times. The court rejected the argument that handguns could be banned as long as other guns, such as long guns, were available, noting that for a variety of reasons, handguns are the most popular weapon chosen by Americans for self-defense in the home. Similarly, the requirement that all firearms be rendered inoperable at all times was found to limit the core lawful purpose of self-defense. And I still say that it's for our nation. If we get taken over by a foreign enemy, if we have guns and arms, we can protect our land. We can protect our nation. Come out of our homes, all of us, bearing arms, and protect our land from a foreign invading interest, right? This is what I think originally, back in the day when it was created, it assumed that people would know how to use the weapon. I'm not suggesting, I'm just suggesting what the Second Amendment stands for. But when you listen to the left, they want to dismantle the Second Amendment. I mean, I believe that this is kind of currently in California. Like, you have to be on a registry. I think you have to be on a registry anyway to get a gun, but it's supposed to be in a lockbox. But how could you get your gun fast enough if somebody was overtaking you? So just say we're overtaken by a foreign interest, and they come in, and first they come into all of the homes, and if you don't have your gun at the ready, you can't protect yourself. All right. So the Second Amendment did not limit prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill. All right. But who's a felon and who's mentally ill? I mean, according to the state, they can say whatever they want about you in order to steal your body parts. So why can't they say you're a felon or a mentally ill too, using provisions of custom framing? Penalties for carrying firearms in schools and government buildings, or laws regulating the sales of guns. The court also noted that there was a historical tradition of prohibiting the carrying of dangerous and unusual weapons that would not be affected by its decision. The court, however, declined to establish the standard by which the future gun regulations would be evaluated. And more importantly, because the District of Columbia is a federal enclave, the court did not have occasion to address whether it would reconsider its prior decisions that the Second Amendment does not apply to the states. I mean, there's a lot that goes on here. While it was argued that the dissent that this protection would most logically be provided by the Equal Protection Clause, not by Due Process Clause, the plurality also found that enough evidence of then existent concerns regarding the treatment of blacks by the state militia to conclude that the right to bear arms was also intended to protect against generally applicable state regulation. Okay, so they're bringing race into it here. So the passage of the 14th Amendment in part was intended to protect the right of ex-slaves to keep and bear arms, while it was argued that by the dissent that this protection will most logically be provided by equal protection. No, it's not. We know it's not. We know people are still being kept as slaves today. Through creative accounting, through creative adoptions, through being sold and bought as children, which is totally unlawful. So there's a lot in the Second Amendment, and when you look up the Second Amendment today, what's going on with the Second Amendment? They're making kind of a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Now, what does that mean? Free state. Does it mean free state or being? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Right. Amy Coney Barrett said she would stick to the original meaning of the Second Amendment in gun cases if she were confirmed to the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett's judgments on Second Amendment issues go even further than those of her mentor, the late Justice Anton Scalia. I think it's Scalia, excuse me. Says UI professor pretty interesting because she protects the Second Amendment right, and our president is for the Second Amendment. Okay. Feel like it's important to note that the president's Liberate Virginia call did not mention COVID, but instead suggested the Second Amendment is in jeopardy there. You guys, the Second Amendment has been in jeopardy a long time. A long time. So let's see what he says. Oh, that's not him. Hang on. I'm just going to show you this.
The president offered me this nomination. I was deeply honored. But it was not a position I had sought out and I thought carefully before accepting. The confirmation process and the work of serving on the court, if confirmed, requires sacrifices, particularly from my family. I chose to accept the nomination because I believe deeply in the rule of law and the place of the Supreme Court in our nation. I believe Americans of all backgrounds deserve an independent Supreme Court that interprets our Constitution and laws as they are written. And I believe I can serve my country by playing that role.
See, that's great. The individual. I want to see if there's some more on, because they talked about her quite a bit with the Second Amendment, right? I mean, when asked to hold up what she's been using to help answer questions, Judge Amy Coney Barrett holds up a blank notepad. Yeah, Senator Pat Leahy is using her past comments about Merrick Garland to argue against her confirmation.
Multiple notebooks and notes and books and things like that in front of us. Can you hold up what you've been referring to in answering our questions? Is there anything on it?
That letterhead that says United States Senate.
That's impressive. You know, most of us have multiple notebooks and notes and books and things like that in front of us. Can you hold up what you've been referring to in answering our questions? Is there anything on it?
That letterhead that says United States Senate.
Oh my God.
He has opened, they will not be so easily destroyed. Trump can be and must be expunged. The hate he has triggered, the Pandora's box he has opened, they will not be so easily destroyed. So, let us brace ourselves. The task is twofold. The terrorist Trump must be defeated, must be destroyed, must be devoured at the ballot box. And then he, at his enablers, at his supporters, at his collaborators, and the Mike Lees, and the William Barrs, and the Sean Hannitys, and the Mike Pences, and the Rudy Giulianis, and the Kyle...
Who is this guy? Terrence Williams is great. If you guys don't follow him, you should. He's great. Keith Olbermann. I mean, this guy just keeps going on. So this person's against Amy Coney Barrett. What? I don't know enough about originalism. I have to look into it. I don't think this is why she's trying to get on the Supreme Court. I think she was asked to be on the Supreme Court. I think she has a nice enough life as it is. She doesn't have to do it. It's a sacrifice, you guys. I mean, this is interesting. It's very interesting. So, if you guys didn't watch this judicial hearing, I guess you should.
Every nominee to the Supreme Court by Republican or Democrat nominees, I don't think I've